Okay. So today we are here, and this is going to be the video for observation two, standard number three. So the purpose of this video is we are doing a um, updated version of our Capturing Kid Heart. This is the program that our school district has implemented. Um, that they did a few years ago, I think back in 2019, where they had the Capture Kids Hearts organization come in and put all of our teachers through some training. And so, talking to Ms. Shepherd and talking to some of our other administrators, they wanted to develop in our Sunshine Committee, our Capture Kid Heart Committee, which includes, I'd have to get their names. It's about six individual teachers who are in charge of making sure that we are following compliance and making sure that we are still implementing. And if there's any updates to the programs, they make sure that they come. And I'm sure that you two have some on y'all's campus as well. And so, first thing, my name is Anthony Campbell. I'm a math teacher and a coach here at Madisonville High School. I'd like to introduce our other two teachers, one of them being a veteran teacher who actually went through our program, and then one who is been with the school district for a couple years, but it was after 2019 whenever the school district gave the training. So, Ms. Campbell.
Oh, I'm Tony Campbell. I've been in pre-K for about 12 years, and I love capturing kids' hearts.
I'm Miss Barker. I work in special ed at the junior high.
And so, like I said before, so the purpose of this meeting um, is to go over and just retrain and to reiterate some of the things that are very important during capturing kids' hearts. So the thing that we're going to be using today is going to be the Capture Kid Hearts manual. So I got some printed copies for y'all so y'all can follow along as we're going through it. So when you're dealing with capturing kids' hearts, um, the main question that they ask is, what is more important? Is your teaching content, the math, the science, the English, the arithmetic, is that more important, or is building a quality relationship the most important thing? And so for me at the high school, I think it's, if you don't have that strong relationship, especially with them older kids who've been through the school district, you're really not gonna get through them. And I know you two are at different campuses. So what is y'all's thoughts on that question?
I think the building relationships is very important because if they don't trust you, then they're not going to listen to you.
Yes, I agree.
Okay. So the move along. If I get this thing to click. Okay. So today's agenda. So what we're going to go over is first thing we're going to talk about introductions. Then the second thing is going to be our Excel model, okay, which is an acronym that we use, and it's kind of the five non-negotiables when you're dealing with capturing kids' hearts. And these are the five things um, that whenever the principals come in and they do walkthroughs and they look for these things, or the sons or the like I said, the Capturing Kid Heart committee comes into the classrooms and they're looking for these five things. And y'all probably already utilize these things in your own classrooms right now, but they just give it a name. And so greetings, which is a huge thing, especially at the beginning of the year, whenever you're starting out, is greetings. And I know, and we'll get a little more in depth in that, but there's multiple different ways that you can greet your students, because as y'all know, some like contact, some don't like contact, and there's things that you have to modify to these kind of things. Good things. This is just bringing up some good things that they're going to talk about. Classroom social contracts, how to build them, what's some good strategies that you can use while you're building those. The four discipline questions, okay, attention grabbers, your launch, and then we'll have a little conclusion at the end. Okay. So, so as we get started, our objectives. So after this PD, you will be able to hopefully understand the value and the importance of building a quality relationship with your students. Like y'all both said, um, that is very important. It's even more important than your content. You know, you're trying to get to the content to them, but they're probably not going to absorb it as much as if they don't have that relationship with you. They're probably going to turn away and not care what you're talking about. Be able to use the five non-negotiable tools or the Excel model as you're going and to understand and recognize when you're using it, you know, because you won't be using this every single day, but it's going to be something that hopefully you implement and it's going to be used without you even thinking about it as you're going through. Third thing is be able to manage your classroom in a whole new way to improve instruction. So hopefully by having these tools and having this Excel model implemented, it's going to make your classroom go a lot smoother and give you some classroom management strategies that you can fall back on as you're going through. Okay. So first thing, who are you? Okay. So the first thing, when I went through the program, like I said, very new to it, didn't know anything about it. I was already, back in 2019, I was already 9 years into teaching and been to three different districts. And so I didn't really know what this was. And nobody ever told me this is the things that you're going on thing or this you're going through. But once they started to talk about the Capturing Kids Hearts program, I quickly realized that I was already doing some of these things. You know, I guess it's kind of my personality that I want to get to know these kids because I felt the same way as they did, is if I didn't trust my teachers or I didn't know them, I wasn't going to learn from them. And so I really loved going through the Capturing Kids Hearts program. Was it kind of a weird thing? Yeah, because I think we took, correct me if I'm wrong, didn't we take 3 or 4 days? It took almost the whole week, and we had to split up. They split us up into groups, but it allowed us to interact with other teachers and our peers, and then you got to see what their background was, and it kind of helped some of them that aren't quite willing to open up. They opened up, and it also gave you a lot of different strategies and a different way to think about how you attack your classroom, how you attack your teaching. And so that's one way it affected me. And so, Ms. Campbell, I know you went through the program. Did it affect you any way different or same?
I mean, it did help me like put a name to the things I was doing. And yes, it was very awkward. It really was. And I am not a very outspoken. I'm one of those that I'm gonna hide back. And so it was very weird for me. But I did like it. I liked it and I got things from it that were very helpful.
So, Ms. Barker, I know you haven't got a chance to go through it, but would it be something that you would be willing to go to the training or?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm interested to know like the science behind it. Like we all already are trying to get to know the kids. Why are we, like what's making us want that naturally?
Mhm.
I think that'd be interesting.
Yeah. And so, like I said before, we're going to be working out of the Capturing Kids Hearts workbook. Okay. And so I printed off the copy so that way y'all have them. Another resource that you can always go to is the capturingkidshearts.org. And this is an excellent resource. I went on there recently, and this is where you'll see a lot of the updates. This is where you can find a lot of icebreakers. You can find a lot of activities that'll help your students to interact. Like, so if you're having struggle with building those relationships, they have a lot of different things and resources out there for you, and it's open to the public. I don't think it's something that you have to have, but our school district pays for it. And so if you ask your principal or your teacher, they can, or your administrator or another teacher who knows, they could probably show you how they go about accessing all that information. Okay.
And they'll send you emails if you sign up for their stuff. And I don't know how, but it comes at the right time.
Mhm.
It's like you open it up and you're like, remembered we're doing this or this. And it's at the end of the school year or the middle of the school year. And you're like, oh, yeah, they're great reminders.
Yeah.
So
Do you
they
get
send
those?
out emails.
The
I
email?
don't think so. Those.
Maybe you could forward those to her. See. You can
Yes.
see. Okay.
Yeah, I need to pick me up.
So the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna watch a little short clip video from the founder of Capturing Kids Hearts, Flip Flippin. Okay, he has a good motivational speaker. Goes around and speaks to all different districts and things like that. And they showed I believe they showed the same video or a version of this video as they're going. So let me try to get it going. Map.
Procrastination isn't your fault. It's a broke mentality. School is probably the most consistent part of their lives. So how can you ever hope to? Hi, my name's Flippin. I'm founder and chairman of the Flippin Group and creator of the award-winning process called Capturing Kids' Hearts. Let me ask you a question that you probably think about every single day. What would it take to have truly engaged kids and really happy teachers in your classrooms? Now, I know this may seem like a question with no easy answer, but in this video, I'm going to tell you some surprising answers to the question and tell you about one thing that you can do right now to transform even your most problematic classrooms into problem-solving centers of learning. You and I both know that your teachers face a huge challenge today, greater than ever before. They have to raise the bar on student performance while at the same time competing with these outside pressures like they've never had. The fact is, for students without a stable support system at home, your school is probably the most consistent part of their lives. So how can you ever hope to develop the minds of your kids when their basic emotional needs are going unmet every single day? Well, decades of experience and academic research have shown that establishing the right culture and the right climate in your classroom is really the surprising answer that educators have been looking for. In other words, as we say, you must capture a child's heart before you can ever hope to capture a child's mind. Thankfully, there's a process to help you and your teachers succeed at this important task. Over the last 25 years, the Capturing Kids' Hearts process has impacted thousands of teachers and millions of students. And here are just a couple of real-world examples of districts and schools that are achieving amazing educational results with students using our Capturing Kids' Hearts process. This is exciting. This is Mountain View Middle School in California. Data reports from Mountain View show that suspensions on their campus dropped from 459 to 170, a 63% reduction in suspensions in just the first 2 years of implementing Capturing Kids' Hearts. School administrators said the Capturing Kids' Hearts ideals and concepts have changed the entire culture at their school and made them much stronger leaders. This is Nicholas County High School in West Virginia. Data reports from Nicholas County show a 40% decrease in dropouts and a district attendance rate of 97.26%, a 57% reduction in district discipline referrals, and a 35% decrease in out-of-school suspensions and expulsions in just the first 3 years of implementing Capturing Kids' Hearts. School administrators there said if a district is serious about student success and follows the program as it's designed, dramatic results will occur. We cannot give enough praise to the Flippin Group for leading our district through this process of improving our school system. Now, perhaps you're asking, how is any process able to achieve dramatic transformations like these in such a short period of time? Well, it's a great question, actually, with a surprisingly simple answer. Here's the big idea. When you focus on the culture and the climate of your campus and classrooms as your top priority, then everything else you care about begins to improve very, very quickly. Your number one goal should be to strengthen your students' connectedness to their teachers and then with each other. This is accomplished through shared agreements of behavior, which mitigates inappropriate, disruptive conduct and actually empowers learning, helping all the students, including those which are most at risk, to succeed. Focusing on improving the culture and climate of your campus and classroom actually produces jaw-dropping levels of success as measured by increased student achievement, decreased discipline referrals, increased attendance rates, increased graduation rates, and excitingly, increased teacher satisfaction and retention. Gallup researchers have reported that students who strongly agree that their school is committed to building the strengths of each student and say that they have at least one teacher who makes them excited about the future are approximately 30 times as likely as their peers who strongly disagree with these two statements to be emotionally engaged in school. The good news is that every teacher can be the teacher that kids remember for a lifetime if they possess the skills to connect deeply with their students. And that's exactly why we developed Capturing Kids' Hearts, and it's why I want you to experience it for yourself. Capturing Kids' Hearts is a research-based process designed to help teachers and administrators actually transform their classrooms and campuses into high-achieving centers of learning. Over the last 25 years, we've been honored to partner with school districts from all around the country.
So after watching, get this back up there. So after watching the video, back to where we were. So what was one thing that y'all noticed, or what was one thing you liked about the video? Thing that stood out to you?
I like that the, the wheel showing you all of the things. I like that they also care about the teacher satisfaction. It's not just about the students, it's about,
And that's
you know,
that's awesome
we're
that you
also
brought that,
part
right?
of that environment.
Because the Capturing Kids' Hearts, one of their thing is not just you building a relationship with the students, but also your staff and your admin building it with your staff, or your staff building it between each other, and the relationships building with them. So you can use the same model in a workplace, or just like you said, between all the
Yeah, I've been
teachers.
part of staff meetings where they also share good things. They also send us off to lunch,
Yes.
stuff like that.
Yes, and so it's also implemented in there. What about you?
I liked all the positive things. Like it's like if you start doing this, then you see, I mean, it might take a few years, but everything just turns around and it's all positive now instead of, everything being negative. in your
Well, and
school.
especially I think with our day and age, with the TEA coming out and saying, well, you're a failing campus, or you're not achieving this, you're not reaching that. And so telling us all the negative and the thing that we have to try to teach toward this test and try to get that. And this is a good way to focus more on the relationships and the positives, and building that before. And if you build those and you strengthen those grades will come up on their own, by, like you said, by the students interacting a little more. So the the quote that I put on here is relationship capacity. So the capacity within a relationship to withstand the struggles and issues. And so, like we said, us being here in Madisonville, we're an economically disadvantaged school. So all of our kids are coming from different backgrounds, and me being a coach, I see it all the time where kids even that haven't eaten anything, that haven't, they can't go home and do homework all the time. They're not going home to perfect situations every single time. And we have to understand that. And so I think by building that relationship and having that, you can be a little more sympathetic, but you also are going to be able to reach that kid. You'll break through that. They're not going to bring their struggles to the classroom and then be like, well, that's going to hold me back. I can't learn because of this, this, and this. But if they know that you love them and that you are putting every effort into them, they're going to learn from you. So his quote that Flip Flippin said was, if you have a child's heart, you're going to have a child's mind. And so, yeah, I think that's one of his biggest things that he's putting on. And I think you see that, and you ask students. I always have students that come to me after they've already graduated and be like, man, coach, I just loved your classroom. And they wasn't loving the math.
Right. Yeah.
They were loving just how I treated them, and how I interacted with them, and the relationship. That's what they're gonna hold on to. Just like Ben Phillips messaged me about my leg. He's graduated
That's right.
8, 9, 10 years ago, and he was like, man, coach, I still love you, man. And that is what sticks with you.
And it also gives these kids that are struggling at home someone that you may be able to help them with something they have going on at home, not just their math.
Yeah.
You know, you can be that.
Yeah.
And a lot of times they don't want to talk about it, but if you have that relationship, then they'll feel comfortable talking
there's-
to you about it.
There's been multiple times with the high school seniors that they want to talk. I'm like, yeah, it might be something for a counselor, but they want to talk to you because
Right.
you've, like you said, you established that relationship, and I know you're the same way where you can
Yeah.
reach those kids as you're going through. So, like you said, that was a comment that or quote that really popped out, and I just wanted to share that and kind of something that stick in y'all's minds as you're going through the program. So let's start the 5 non-negotiables that we talked about in our Excel model. Here's the picture of the flyer that they present. And so the Excel stands for, first is engage. So to meet and greet, get to know them. Okay. And we're going to hit these a little more in depth as we go through also. The X is explore. So you're going to explore and discover individuals' needs and interest. Just kind of like we talked about, that every child is different and really learning that background about them. The C is communicate. So they want to make sure that you care, you make your message relevant. So like I said, me teaching high school math, it ain't going to be relevant to them unless I make sure they know that I care about what they're doing. Try to make it as relevant as possible. Empower. So your teaching becomes their doing. So you're kind of giving them, and that's where that social contract's going to be very important. We're going to talk more about that. And then your launch. So something meaningful ending and sending them off. So something that's going to stick with them, and it can be about your lesson or it can be just about like, and I'll let y'all share some of y'all's launches here in a minute when we go through. Okay, so these are the 5, like I said, 5 non-negotiables. These would be the 5 things when the administrators come in and they're going to watch your walkthroughs or observations. These are the things that they really are looking for. Looking at your teaching content, yes, but looking at are you developing these 5 things, or are these implemented in your classroom? Okay. So the first one, engage. So when you first come in, so you're greeting your students. So you need to have something daily, something you're doing. I know something that's big on the high school campus is they want to see you outside your classroom. They want to see you at the door, and they want to see you meeting your students. And this is, to me, is where you're going to grab that student's heart, right off the bat. So it can
First
be,
impressions.
yeah, and it can be a greet at the door, a smile, and ask the name, especially at the beginning of the year. I have at the high school, we have eight different classes, over 100 kids, and it takes me a long time to learn those names. But me, after doing Capturing Kids' Hearts and really implementing this, what I try to do is stand at the door and see their face and try to come up with their name, and then just doing that daily, repeating their names helps me to learn their names as they're going, and so that I know, and I'll try to learn something specific about that student and then talk to them and ask them about it every day. And like I said, this can be a handshake. It can be some other thing. I know that y'all deal with different grades. So what's some other things that y'all do for your greeting? Y'all do something differently besides a handshake?
Well, so outside my door, I've got 4 pictures. And what I do is I make my kids always give me a handshake, because that's the main thing of Capturing Kids' Hearts, is they want you to learn, shake your hand, say your name, good morning, Miss Campbell, and eye contact. That's a little hard in pre-K, but we try it. And then I give them the option of if they want something else. Do they also want a hug and a hand or a high five or a fist bump? So it's like we kind of get 2 of them in there, but I always make them do a handshake no matter what. So
At the junior high, kids still want hugs, so I give out quite a few hugs.
Yeah.
They're not too cool yet.
And one thing to remember, like when you're doing your greeting, I know we have some teachers when we first did the Capturing Kids' Hearts, they thought they were being forced to do this. And so you got to understand that doing it the right way or doing it the wrong way is a big difference. Because if I say, for example, that we're going in and I say, hi, Miss Campbell, and I just be like that, and I don't really, I just kind of say, hey, how are you? Hey, how are you? And don't say your name and don't actually acknowledge you or look you in the face. Just because I'm made to do it and shaking your hand. How do you think that's going to make that student feel?
Right. It's kind of the opposite effect.
Yeah. I'm not important to him. He's just doing that to do it while I'm
Yeah.
shaking my hand. But if you do it the correct way and you're like, "Hi, Miss Campbell, how are you? How was your day? Did you enjoyed your play from last night?" You know,
Mhm.
like for me, I coach sports, and so I usually know all the athletes when they come in, but I don't know the band or the theater kids or a lot of the girls that come in. And so by me acknowledging, trying to learn something about them
Mhm.
and just giving that eye contact and really important in learning their name, to me that opens that connection really fast. And so when you're doing your greeting, make sure, like you said, doing it the right way and not just, even if you're having a bad day, hey, come on, hurry, hurry, come on, rushing them in. Make sure that's, like you said, you're at it's the first thing they see. You're greeting them, you're connecting with them right there. So you're grabbing their heart. And so positive. That's a big thing. Being positive about it, even if you're having something going on in your world, trying to make sure that you have that positive mindset. Maybe taking a deep breath, saying a prayer, something before you step out that door. Welcome and affirm the students, just like we talked about. You are greeting them, but you're doing that. So you're modeling a professional skill. Because how many times when you're going to shake a kid's hand, especially at the high school, you see, or the junior high, I know you said you give them hugs, but if you go to give them a handshake and they give you the cold fish,
Yeah.
Or even the
Yeah.
wrong hand.
they don't know how to shake a hand.
Right.
I got all kinds of guys that don't know how to shake a hand, and you got to tell them, grab my hand,
Yeah.
because they may be going to an interview one day, they may be getting
Mhm.
a job one day, and so you are teaching that skill also when you're greeting them. And then last thing is to check the pulse of the student. You know, how many times I can't tell you how many times that by me greeting at the door or talking or seeing him, I knew that kid was having a bad day.
Mhm.
I knew that they were going through something, they were struggling through something, and it might be something that I need to either, hey, you want to go to the bathroom, and
Yeah.
take a deep breath, clear your chick thing before you go, not just, hey, get in there, start doing the warm up, get going, we're doing math today. How
Yeah.
much of that are they going to listen to
Right.
you? Not very much. And then that might also help you to open up, sending them to a counselor or something like that. Have y'all had any where you're checking the pulse with your kids? Do y'all do the same thing?
Yeah. I also, I'm the cheerleading sponsor. So lots of girls, they greet me in the mornings. And if I see somebody holding back tears or whatever, I tell them, go grab your breakfast and you can go to my room for,
Mhm.
gather your thoughts before heading to class.
See, and that's even engaging the whole district. Like, it doesn't have to be specifically
Right.
your students in your classroom that day. Yeah.
My students usually come in more excited than I am sometimes, but
Maybe not the first of the year, the pre-K kids
No.
cry.
being positive. Like if there's days where I'm only at like an 80%, if I give 100 of my 80%, then that it comes out in the kids, or it might turn my day around and I'm okay, now I'm back at 100 and I'm good, and things like that. And I remember a few years, like, so after we did this, the next year, you're not used to this yet. And so I remember one year I started off without doing the greetings, and I just got there and I was like, what? Something's off.
is
Like
off.
these children are literally, they're acting crazy. Like I don't remember this from the last time. And I was like, I have not done greetings. And so the very next day we started greetings, and like by the end of the week, it was like almost a complete turnaround. Like,
Yeah.
oh goodness.
Yeah.
So you don't realize how much it helps until you don't do it.
Yeah. Yeah, there's days like if I'm giving a test and I'm sitting over on my desk and I'm trying to get that going and I don't get to the door after the bell rang. And same thing, they come in and they're just kind of more rambunctious and it doesn't actually get
Yeah.
them controlled. So
Yeah, stop, let's go back
yep,
out.
go back, redo,
Okay.
Back
get
to
the
the
whole
basics.
Something.
Back to the basics.
So that was just hitting some things for your engaged. And like I said, this is very important at the beginning of the year, as you're going to see at the end, when you're implementing and learning. But it's also very important throughout the whole year that, like you said, that you're doing it, because it kind of establishes that classroom and establishes that pulse of your students. The next thing, when you are greeting, so the proper way to do it, and y'all may add a little bit to this or take it away, is there's 8 cues that you should be really looking at. So first thing is facial expression. Like you said, a lot of them may be faking it, and you can really see they can't hide that facial expression. And making sure that you have a positive, a smile on your face, something that's going on. The tone of your voice. just like I told you, the wrong way to do it would be like, hey, come on, get in here, let's go. If you're real dull and you're not real upbeat, they can kids you can't hide it from them. They're gonna, especially at the high school level. I know at y'all's level maybe a little different, but I think even the little kids, they respond. It's kind of like their mom. They know the tone, and if you're giving them a certain tone, they're gonna be, oh crap, you know. Your handshake, of course, making sure that it's firm handshake, because this is teaching them that skill and how to shake somebody's hand. Um, their grooming or dress. I can't tell you how many times when they come in that that's where they tell us to check dress code. First, second period of the day, check dress code. But you also see some kids who, being economically disadvantaged, you see some kids that haven't changed clothes in a while. Haven't they got holes in their clothes. A smell.
Right. Yeah.
And so our district is really good about, we send them to the principal's office. They can give them those things that they need, those personal hygiene things that you need. Your energy, of course, and that kind of goes with the tone of voice and being positive as you're going. Eye contact, so making sure that you're looking at them when you're doing it, not just hey shaking your hand and acknowledging something else. Giving them that respect that they deserve, that each one of them deserve. Level of relaxation. If you're calm, usually they're going to be calm, you know. And then your posture, making sure that you're standing up. Hey, how are you doing? And not just going through the motions when you're going. So those are 8 cues that you can kind of think about, and that's in page 7 of our book. Okay, so the next one is explore the good things. So these are things, once you've established those relationships with your class, these are some things that you could start off with. These could be your icebreakers. Usually you're going to start these, the second, third day, once you've established your procedures and you've gotten built that relationship where they're going to open up to you a little more. So the first thing is why. So why do your good things? Well, the first thing to me is to show interest, set a positive tone, and teach leadership skills. Because if, as you all know, our kids so love to get their head in their phone and they don't know how to communicate. And so you want to get them to speak up and communicate. And some may be shy and would never speak to anybody if you didn't kind of open up and ask for good things. Now you don't want to force them to do good things, but you want to try to open up to it. And I think, like I said before, I think if once you have that relationship built, they're gonna talk to you. They're gonna want to share it with
Learn
you.
how to listen to.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's
Listen
good.
to others. Yeah.
Yes.
So when to do this? So after the social contract is in place, at the start of the class, maybe 3 times a week, and you can do it more if you want to. So do y'all already implement y'all's good things in y'all's? How often
Yeah.
do y'all you do it daily?
I start out doing it a lot, and then if we don't have enough time, then I won't do it. And sometimes I do my whole class, and sometimes I'm like, all right, we got time for 5 people to share, and then
Mhm.
that week we might finish it out that way.
Yeah.
So
We try to do ours every day.
Yep. And I do the same thing as you. I start off strong with it, and then I'll usually hit it right after a holiday, or I hit it right after we got back from our break, and then try to hit it a little more so that way, because yeah, the high school kids, they're like, all right, coach, come on.
Yeah.
and my level with pre-K is everybody wants to talk to you, and that's a good way of like, all right, you're telling me this now, so you've already said this and we've talked about it, and it lets us move on so that everybody gets
Yeah.
a chance to speak.
Yep. And so about 3 to 5 minutes, call on different students, ask questions, and allow other students to applaud. So they can clap. You can let them clap for each other and do it. You don't have to force them to do it, but just so they acknowledge and they're listening. Also, make sure they're being respectful when they're listening to others give their good thing. Okay. The what if. So the students will not answer the same student daily. So make sure they're not giving you the same thing over and over and over again all the time. So make sure they're giving you something different.
That happens to
me. So, or call on a different student
Mhm.
is really what it's meaning. Don't always the same one, because you have those students who
Especially if you can
wanna
only
talk.
call on 5 people,
Yes.
don't
Yeah.
call on the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
where we
especially
use
you'll have
the
one
draw
person that
key,
wants to
yeah.
talk. Yep. And then if you get a sad answer, So if you ever incur somebody, you're doing good things, but they come out and say something sad, acknowledge that. Don't put them down or tell them, oh, that's not important. We're not
Mhm.
talking about that right now.
Yeah.
And that's another way to check the pulse. That may be something that you say, we need to refer to the counselor, and you may want to pull them aside after.
Or you can tell me a little bit more about this later.
Yes, perfect.
Yeah.
So you're giving them that. Um, so not a good thing or inappropriate. You get some of them ones that want to be goofy and want to say stuff and say that's not what we're doing.
Mhm.
You know. So that's the why, when, how, and what if. And it's good that y'all are already implementing that, even though you didn't go through the training, and it shows why that's important as you're going through. Okay, so the next one is empowering. So building a social contract. So to empower your students is to give them ownership of the classroom. And so one thing that we do that they started is developing that social contract. And we do this for every single class. It's not, I don't make one for one class and then else I have 5 different classes, so I have 5 different social contracts. And so this doesn't take part of your classroom procedures. So this isn't like if they get in trouble, you say social contract. This is something that you're just establishing, and you're going to see on the next slide. It tells you what the questions are that you want to ask. So it's mainly how you can get them to open up, like how they want to be treated, how you want to be treated, things like that. And so the Roman numerals over on the right, you got 5 of them. The first one is initial considerations. Okay, what you initially start off with. The next one is creating buy-in for students. So this is, like I said, gonna give them ownership of it, because if they signed it and you're gonna have them all sign this at the end, they're gonna more than likely follow it, because it's kind of that contract between you and them. So building the social contracts, there's a processing tools, and that's going to be on the next slide, and the elements of the social contract. Like I said, I'll put both of those on the next slide. And then number 4, implementation of the social contract. So how you go about doing this. So this is usually when you have some kind of issue that's brought up, you can refer to your social contract and say, well, you said, we were going to only do this, or we were going to do
Good
that.
reminders.
And it's a good reminder. And it's also going to be posted. And so
It is also very empowering because they think, even though it's not taking place of like the classroom rules, it makes them feel like they made their own rules.
mhm. Yep. Yep. And so that's excellent, because that's, like you said, that's the whole purpose of it, is they did develop their own rules.
Yeah.
Now, are there things that come up that are outside the rules? Yes.
Right.
And then you have to go, okay, well, I got to get that. This has to go to the principal, because you're kind of the judge in your classroom, and then it may go to the Supreme Court. It may go to the next one. And then follow through. And like you said, is once you've established that, following through with what they put on there and what they go on there. So using it, not just posting it because you were told to post it, things like that. And so you can see those on your page 29 and 35, but I kind of put here's a couple pictures. So when you're developing this, the process to go through is you can establish a group leader role. So the first thing is you can get a scribe. So usually a girl who has good handwriting, is what I do in mine. So get you a poster, and we're going to write out. So over on the right is the 4 questions that you should be asked. And so how do you want to be treated by me, the leader? Um, how do you want to be treated by each other? How do you think I, as a leader, want to be treated? So it's also important, how the students feel, but it's also important how you feel and how students know that you feel, so you opening up, and that's opening up that line of communication also. And then how do you want to treat each other when there's conflict? Okay. And what do you want? And so some other roles besides the scribe would be your spokesperson. So speaks for a group. So a lot of teachers, I know some teachers, they'll split theirs into some small groups, and then they'll all talk about it, kids will talk about it, and then have somebody speak for the group. You can put them in groups of 4, not too big where it kind of get out of control, but enough where everybody has a voice and everybody gets to talk. Task manager keeps everybody on track, which usually is the teacher. It's going to be you. Affirmer praise others. So that's once you have them all start telling the scribe what to put on the paper, everybody affirms, yeah, that's a great idea. Let's talk about that or do that. And then a timekeeper. Like you said, you don't want this to take up too much time when you're developing it. It should be maybe 10, 15 minutes when you're developing this for each class. And usually it's very good the first couple days, 3 days when you're going. Okay. So communication. So this is a big one for discipline. So having that communication once you've established you engage them, and once you've empowered them, now let's say that you have issues in your classroom. So I like this saying, it says stop arguing. There's 4 questions, get results. So before Capture Kids Hearts, can you think back of when you didn't use these 4 questions? So I do in my classroom that I would always be like, no, you need to be quiet. You need to stop doing this. Once we got the 4 questions, which are, what are you doing? And I'll be completely honest. When we first did this, I think this isn't going to work. No, with the high school kids, And so, but I tried it and I did it. And you quickly, how many high school kids will stop doing if you just ask them, what are you doing?
Right, because they know they're not making a wise choice
Exactly.
when they're making it.
Well, and it leaves them, they can't argue. It doesn't leave them room to argue back with you. So you're not going to argue with them. It's what are you doing? And they have to answer the question.
Right.
If they answer it with a smart aleck comment, well, I'm not doing this. Well, what are you supposed
What
to
are
be
you
doing?
supposed to be doing?
And it leads you to the next one. And then are you doing it? So if they say, I'm supposed to be doing this and this, are you doing it? Okay. And then number 4, what are you going to do about it? And so that kind of leads you up. And a lot of times you won't even get to 4. A lot of times I'll do 1 and 2, and then they change and they'll fix themselves. Okay. And so that's where I put, do they fix it or not? And so y'all being at the different levels, do y'all think these work
Yeah,
using the 4 questions?
absolutely.
They work even on 4-year-olds. Like
Yeah.
now, not all of them, but for the most part, I can ask them, what are you doing? And
Yeah.
they'll stop and think about it and,
Mhm.
And
for me, being in special ed, it's not necessarily a discipline as they're just completely off task. And this kind of helps them regroup, like, what are you doing? What are you supposed to be doing?
Yeah.
Is that what you're working on right now? Okay,
Yep. So attention grabbers. So here's some things that also you can use that our principals want us to make sure that we're using is, and you can bring these back to the classroom, would be raising your hand, of course. You want to make sure that they're raising their hand and not speaking out. But they also can use like the check yourself. So making sure that if individuals are doing something inappropriate time, and you're trying to, hey, stop doing, have something to do with our timeout. I know that's a big one. We even use that in our faculty meetings.
yeah,
we do that.
Where how many times that people are talking and chattering, and then they're like, hey, it's something just to grab their attention when you're going. And then the foul, like you put down, and I think that's probably the one that's not used as much or more than anything, especially at the high school level. I know it's weird because you usually just jump right into the 4 questions if they're doing something like that, or the social contract. But those are some things that they want you to use.
I like that one for other students.
yes.
Yeah.
Especially because it follows up with 2 put-ups.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
that wasn't very kind. So you need to say 2,
Yeah,
give them 2
I've
put-ups.
seen a teacher use that. And she was like, "Oh, that was not a very kind thing."
Yeah.
And it's not. It's more of a, I'm checking you. You shouldn't have said that. And now, give your friend 2 comments,
Yeah.
compliments or something. So I don't think it's used often, but when it is used, I think it's good.
Yeah.
Okay. And so then our launch. So we're into our last letter. So a powerful ending example. So the first one is your kid president. Have you ever seen his videos? So I put it on there and we could watch it, but I'll just leave that on there and y'all can go watch y'all's. But it's so motivational, especially seeing a kid talking to other kids. And I know at the younger level, it's probably pretty good. In the high school level, they like it, but they're still kids too. They can think that they're grown and have facial hair and everything, but they're not. So read affirmations. So this can happen at the end of if you have them write their affirmations or they're writing in a journal. Quotes. So giving them a quote. So what kind of launches do y'all use?
Oh, this took me years, and when I mean years to find, because I couldn't remember any of them or whatever. But, and I do one at the very end of the day, but I do this after I've given my lesson, and we break out into our our stations. There was like this big, okay, we're done reading this book. All right, now go over here. It was lacking. So I went to Finding Nemo. And when they're getting out, brushing in the anemone, he goes, "Are you ready to learn and get some knowledge?" And so that's what we do. So I tell them, they're basically, we're done. I was like, okay, so are we ready? And then they'll chat back to me to get some knowledge. And as soon as that happens, everybody gets up and they go in their spots, and that's how we start.
Also
Our
breaks
day.
up the day a little bit.
Yes, it's yeah.
Well, being in special ed, it's important to me for the kids to be treated as equals, to be seen by their peers. So I tell them to have a good day and be a good friend.
Mhm.
I tell that to my special ed kids, and since we merge with gen ed a lot, I'll tell it to them also. My kids.
So if it was a rough day, talk about how there's always tomorrow. So like you said, if it was a rough day in class, or like I said, some of them got in trouble, things like that, you can talk about, hey, let's be better tomorrow. Something like that. That's what I used at high school. It's just like, make good choices, don't do nothing
Yeah.
stupid. I'll see y'all tomorrow.
I've had a kiddo that was pretty bad like all day long, and the next day before I even really let him in the door, like after we did our little greeting, and I said, "Hey, do you remember what happened yesterday?" And then we talked about it, and I said, "Okay, so when you step in this room, we're going to be completely different, right? We're going to have a better day." And I mean, it worked. Just kind of one of those.
Set the bar.
Hang
Leave
on
that
a
behind.
second,
Mhm.
yeah, and that even worked.
All right. So moving on. So taking Capture Kids Hearts back to your classroom. So like we've already kind of talked about this, our implementation plan should take about 1 to 4 weeks. And like you said, you're going to start off week 1. You should engage students. You should be greeting at the door. You should be building those relationships with them. Okay. And like I told y'all, there's some activities in the book. There's a lot of activities and new updated activities on the Caption Kids Hearts website. Week 2 should be your empower. That's where you should be building your social contracts. I like our district starts off with usually only a couple days, Thursday, Friday, or Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So that way you can start the engage week 1, and then your week 2, you can develop those social contracts and start empowering those. And then also you should be doing your launches and your greeting, and all of your discipline questions as you're going through. And then your week 3 and 4, this is where you should be fully bringing it together, doing your good things daily, at least 3 times a week. You should be engaging them, communicating, launching them, and doing all your 5 non-negotiables. Okay, so this is kind of and you can modify this. You may get more done earlier. You may push it a little longer. Like you said, it just depends on your kids, how much they handle, and you want to stick with them. So,
I think one of those things in there was like a rater,
mhm.
where you kind of rate how your day went. That does not work for pre-K very well. So, I
Are
always
they
tell
all
them,
good or all bad?
yeah, or they don't even know what the word is.
Yeah.
If,
Yeah, they don't
Yeah.
quite understand how to do
then
something.
we even do our social contracts a little different than everyone. But I would say, hey, okay, this is our word, or this is what we focused on. Do you think we did a good job? Do you remember when, and I try to think back to what a kid did, and we kind of talk about it as like a whole, like a small group lesson in a way.
Yeah.
At the very end of the day. So
And so our final tips and takeaway. So just some final tips that I put on there, and we kind of hit these a while ago. So greeting at the door, eye contact, positive handshake. Take time for good things. So don't just pass these up. Don't think they're not important. Try to take time, show interest, 3 to 5 minutes, 3 times a week. Like you said, you may do this a lot early and then move along and do it 1 time a week as you move along. But the kids need that. They need to hear it.
Yeah.
Building your social contracts, make sure that it's student-led, student buy-in, one for each class and signature. Establish and use attention grabbers. Okay, so hand raise, check timeouts, check yourself. And students should follow suit. Students should use these also. And I think they do. I think they really buy into it. And then launch the students out of the class. Give them something motivated. Show them a video. Give them a saying, something that you always want to do. Make it memorable. Something like you said that's great that the students they know that it's going to stick with them.
yeah.
And so then just to reiterate our 4 does 1 plus questions that we use, what are you doing? What are you supposed to be doing? Are you doing it? And then what are you going to do about it? Make sure that you have those.
I've also adopted that into my house for my personal children.
And
Instead
it
of just
works.
losing it when they're not doing something right.
Yeah.
Ask them, what are you doing in here?
Yeah.
What are you supposed to be doing in here?
And it
Yeah.
does, and it makes it where you're
Yeah.
not, it puts ownership on them,
Right.
their actions.
My personal child did it to me. Where I
So,
realized, I was like, oh, she was in that. Anyway.
so that's all we have. I appreciate y'all. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having us.